kids, it's Ms. Adams. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a trip I took to Mexico when I was in college. I took it for college credit in December during our Christmas break, which in college is a little bit longer than we usually have. And I went with a group of people from my college. I literally flew to Mexico right after taking some finals, flew all night, ended up through Mexico City and into southern Mexico, which is where I started out. And then there are a few photos that are more modern from about 15 years ago when I was part of a group of teachers. I was chosen for a Fulbright Hays Scholarship, which is through the federal government. And we traveled through Mexico and Canada, spending about 3 weeks in each. And so I have some more photos that I've put in another slideshow, actually more than one extra slideshow, that I'll tell you more about that trip. There are a little of those on the end of this. So I'll start with the first part, telling you about my trip when I was in college, and I will present. So let's talk a little bit about Mexico, and let's start by looking at a map. So if you know a little bit about Mexico, you know that up here is the United States and it kind of curves around. This is also Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula. And then it borders Belize, which is a very small country, and Guatemala. And you can see that it shows like Olmec, and it shows the Aztec Empire, which is more in the central part, and then the Maya are here on the Yucatan. I've never been to the Yucatan. I've always wanted to see and climb like at Chichen Itza, the Mayan pyramids, but I never have had an opportunity to do that. All right, so just a little bit, it shows the Aztec Empire, but I like this slide because it also shows you that there were other groups of indigenous or the native people. And Tenochtitlan is this area where the Aztecs lived. It's modern day Mexico City. And the Aztecs lived on an island in the middle of a lake. And then I'm going to start out just talking a little tiny bit about the Zapotec area, which is where Oaxaca, Mexico is. All right, and here's Monte Alban. It's where the Zapotec Indians lived. And I want you to notice that I'm there in December, but can you see how dry it is? It was very dry, and we'll go back in the summer, and it's very green because it rains a lot in Mexico in the summer as opposed to what we're used to here in the winter. But Monte Alban is a UNESCO historic site, and it has been excavated quite a bit more than the first time I went there. The second time I was there, it's much more excavated, and there's a lot more to see. These people didn't build pyramids, but they built these kinds of structures. This is kind of interesting because this is my friend Kathy, who was in my Spanish class and was my roommate on the trip. And she got to pose here with these figures. They called them the dancers, but now they think they were probably slaves. I'm in Mexico City at this point, and I just want to show this slide first because when you think about Mexico City, I want you to realize that it is a place where the indigenous people built their city. The Aztecs lived there. And so you can see these Aztec ruins. This is called the Plaza of the Three Cultures, the Aztec ruins. Then the Spanish came and they ended up taking over. They fought the Aztecs, but also they brought them diseases that they had no immunity to. So you can see the colonial church that the Spanish built, and then back here, the modern day Mexico. So modern day office building. Mexico City is one of the biggest cities in the world. It's about 8 or 9 million people. Some people say it's even larger than that. It's extremely congested and crowded, and it's a city that's very vibrant, has a lot going on. I really like it, and I've been just twice, but it's really a great place to visit. So Teotihuacan is a place that the Aztecs had these huge pyramids. The Aztecs didn't build them, and there's kind of some question as to who did. Some people say the Toltecs built them, but those people maybe were killed in a drought or in some kind of war, who knows, but they were gone, and then the Aztecs built their city up. I like this picture because these little serpents. This is called the Pyramid of the Serpents. It's not really very big, but they're so cool looking, but they don't want people climbing on it. So when you go, there's always somebody there guarding it so nobody gets up on it. I'm actually surprised at the things they do let you climb on, but this thing they want to keep very carefully. I'm on the Pyramid of the Sun, and I'm looking out at this little walkway here that's called the Avenue of the Dead. And it's winter, but you can see how very dry it is. Here are some people from my group. We just came kind of a back way in from a parking lot, and we ended up walking sort of sideways to get at these pyramids. This is the Pyramid of the Sun, which is the third biggest pyramid of the world. You can decide for yourself when you look at them if you think they're similar or not to the Egyptian pyramids. I think they have some features of them. I mean, I guess a pyramid just kind of is a pyramid, but the Pyramid of the Sun is very, very large. You can kind of see them off in the distance. It is sort of weird to get there and just be like, is that a pyramid I see? Because you've driven out of a huge city. Now, some of the structures are flat, like we saw at Monte Alban. This may have been at a place where the Aztecs did some of their rituals. I'm making quotation marks with my hands because their rituals may have involved human sacrifice. They may have done it on a structure like this, or they may have done them on the top of the pyramids. But we do know that the Aztecs were very active in human sacrifice. All right, so we see more of those types of structures. Here's looking up. I just love these little sort of animal figures. They're on the side. Some of these have been reconstructed. They've been excavated. I'm on the Pyramid of the Sun, which is the tallest of the pyramids. I'm at the top of it, and I'm looking over here at the Pyramid of the Moon. The Pyramid of the Moon is sort of situated like at the end of the Avenue of the Dead. So to me, it always seems a little grander. I think that Pyramid of the Moon is more beautiful. Here you can see some of those other sort of, I don't know if they're dragon-like characters. Here we can, you're looking up, like, can I climb it? It really is an obstacle to go on. Also, the problem is that you're by about a mile and a half above sea level. Mexico City itself, you sometimes you hear Denver's the mile high city. Mexico City is about a mile and a half almost, and this is just right outside of it. So if you've ever been someplace with a high altitude, I always feel like I have some extra gravity pulling me as I carry stuff up a flight of stairs or walk up those stairs, because you get less oxygen when you're up there higher. So then you really do feel it in these parts of Mexico. So just walking on the Avenue of the Dead like you do. Here I am. I'm here on the left in a pair of gigantic bell bottoms, which I assure you at the time were in style. And my father and I went to find those once when we were in Seattle, and we had to go to several stores to get those perfect pants, just an FYI. And we've climbed all the way on the top. I don't know if you can see over here. I'm with my friend Kathy from my Spanish class. People are trying to go back down. One of the problems in climbing those pyramids is there are no railings. And also, because the people built it like a couple of thousand years ago, they must have been much smaller, and so we're used to a uniformity in our stairs, and these don't have it, and the stairs aren't that deep. Here I am. I made it. I'm victorious in my giant bell bottoms. Yeah, that's quite something to look up there and think, I'm going to go all the way up there. In the United States, I feel like we probably wouldn't let people climb on something like this, because both times I've been there, it seems dangerous to me. I've never heard of anybody falling, but I've never heard that anybody ever did. Here you can see more Mexico. I'm standing on one pyramid I'm on the Pyramid of the Moon at the end of the Avenue of the Dead, and the Pyramid of the Sun is over here. More little structures. Now, obviously, I did not take this. It's a postcard that I purchased because at night we went and had dinner, and then we went back, and they do a sound and light show where they light up the pyramids and tell you the stories of their gods that lived there. Of course, they have a very interesting mythology. For those of you who like Greek or Roman mythology, look into the Aztec mythology and Quetzalcoatl, because it's quite interesting. All right, I'm just showing this. It's just a kind of a famous building. That's all. That design is very well known. It's on the grounds of the University of Mexico. Here's the view of my hotel room just to show you how glamorous Mexico was. We stayed in middle class hotels, so a lot of times nobody spoke English. We're the only when we went to Oaxaca, we're the only people there, and my parents tried to call me at the hotel, but nobody could understand them, or they wouldn't put them through to my room. They couldn't understand what they were saying. They had to wait till my brother, who was taking Spanish in high school, came home to talk to the person on the phone. This is the National Cathedral, and it's on a place in a kind of an area of Mexico City that has a lot of important buildings, and it also was an important area for the Aztecs. I'll show that to you when we see the more modern photos. So here's the church. Remember, or maybe I haven't said this yet, that about 82% of people in Mexico are Catholic, so there are a lot of Catholic churches everywhere. Here we are. We went to a university to meet with a professor, and they invited us to it was their Christmas celebration. And so we ate a lot of food and had a really great time. I'm there on the right. Here's a really amazing museum. Apparently, I only took a few pictures, but the Museum of Anthropology, it has this amazing water feature there. That's something that was an archaeological find and excavated. This is very famous. You'd think I could have centered it in my photo, but I could not. Here's the Aztec calendar. That is a very famous find. And here's some remains from a tomb that was found. Here we're back. This is called the Presidential Palace. It's where the government, kind of like our White House, and that square that is in the center, that's the National Cathedral is around it as well, and it is called the Zocalo. Zocalo is a word that means square, and a lot of towns might have a little Zocalo or a town square. Inside the Presidential Palace, they love fountains, and they also remind you of the Romans, I bet, where they use these arches. There's a lot of Spanish influence. This is in some of their congressional meeting places. You can see it's sort of elaborate room, great ceiling. I was there around Christmas time, so there were all these little celebrations. I don't know what these little characters stand for, but you could take your picture. They had sleighs with Santa and all kinds of just celebratory things. Now I've come to a place called Guanajuato. It's a silver mining city, and it also has this incredible aqueduct that isn't in use any longer, but it looks just like something you'd see in ancient Rome to transport the water. You can see it there. Guanajuato is a really pretty city, and I went there a second time, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in one of the other slideshows. But it's really pretty because it's hot in these areas, and this is north of Mexico City in an area where there's a lot of silver mined. But it's hot, so they have like a lot of the buildings and structures are white. You can see a little bit more color. Now I want you to remember that picture because that is a fake castle that has some play in my next trip to there. I told my parents that I stayed in a horrible hotel and they didn't believe me. And then I got my film back. My parents said I was exaggerating, but look how terrible that is. That's my friend Kathy, who was my roommate on the trip, laying on one of the beds in the terrible hotel. After my parents saw the photographic evidence, they said that this one time I wasn't exaggerating. This is modern day Oaxaca, and you can see this cute little town square, a Zocalo. They always are selling balloons. You can see all kinds of them. And then we went to this market, and I even tried grasshoppers. The first time I was there, I saw somebody eating them, and I was like, I am never eating that. My mother says that when I came back, I was like 20, that I said I liked Mexico, but next time I went, I'd take a jar of peanut butter in my suitcase. So I guess I wasn't a very adventurous eater at that time. But the next time I went, I thought, I'm just going to try things. Even if I don't like them, I want to say I've tried it. And they actually weren't bad. I didn't mind it. They're kind of crispier than the kinds I've had at like the baseball stadium, or there's a place up on Capitol Hill, a Mexican restaurant that serves them. They were just sort of greasy and fried and crispy. Here are some it's just some really beautiful peppers that you can buy at the market. You can stop and get like some melon or some different kinds of fruit and put some hot sauce on it. So we went to a place that sells chocolate in this same market, and they say that that Montezuma, who was the leader of the Aztecs when Cortez came with the Spanish, they say that he drank like 12 or 13 cups of chocolate a day, and it wasn't sweetened. So anybody who's ever tasted some baker's chocolate by accident must understand how I feel when I say that. Must sounds like it must have been horrible. But here they are, and you could buy these tablets and make Mexican hot chocolate. So I brought some back as gifts. Here he's showing where the chocolate comes from and the machine they used to make it. Here's a very pretty church in Oaxaca. And yes, even in modern times, this I took about 15 years ago, you can see somebody walking, carrying the things they want to sell right there on their head in a basket. I took a couple pictures. Actually, I took a lot of pictures. I'm going to show you a couple of them. I took these pictures as I was driving somewhere. We were on a, because there were 16 of us, we had a chartered bus. And when we went at places, I just want to show you through the windows how there are a lot of places just around that you can stop and have something to eat. People are trying to sell you stuff. You can buy auto parts. You can ride in a motorcycle pulling a kind of a, I don't know, like it looks like those pedicabs that you could ride in. There are lots of them here. This is in Oaxaca. You can buy clothing, and you can see that it looks like the people live above there. You can buy your casket. This is Yagul. It is outside of Oaxaca, and it is a historic site. It's not very well excavated yet. I think they're still working on it. There wasn't anybody there. We're the only people there. There wasn't anybody watching it, and there wasn't anybody else visiting. But so you can just see this probably was a ball court. And there's just some other places that are excavated. It kind of looks like it's going to start raining. You can see that in the summer how much greener it is than it was in the winter. We went to a school because we were a group of teachers, and this school, they have like two sessions, one in the morning for like 6 hours and one in the afternoon, so an early and a late. And they even had two offices, and there's a second office. We went in a classroom. You can see that this is only 15 years ago. It was not nice at all, really very old, no technology of any kind. And then I thought you might like just these little manicured trees. I don't know if that's a little basket. Is that a birdhouse or a regular house? Is that a bunny or a rooster? Anyway, here are some things of my first trip and my second trip to Mexico that I thought you might enjoy.